Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Wrestling Wives. We are really excited today because we have another guest.
I know. Guest episodes are so fun. I love having just like me and you like banter back and
Yep.
forth, but I feel like bringing someone else in always gets like the shift off of us, and then we get to learn about like somebody that we've never met before.
Yes.
Talk about wrestling stuff. So today we have a Kelli. Do you mind introducing yourself first and last name and a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Kelli Katherman. I am a wrestling mom, a wrestling coach's wife, and also an author. Recently launched a book called "I Really Want to Win" by Rocky the Wrestling Dog back in December, and the whole theme is wrestling. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm been talking about lately. But we live and breathe wrestling in our house. I have two boys I have a junior and a seventh grader. So just this last year, we kind of graduated out of the youth wrestling scene. We had been in it for, gosh, almost 11 years now. And we're now completely kind of in the high school wrestling scene and kind of doing all of that. So it's been a fun transition, and we're finally kind of heading in the same direction rather than one here and one there and all over the place. But yeah, I have two boys. We keep up with everything. My husband is very much involved in wrestling as well. He's our youth club administrator, works on our board. He's also involved in our Minnesota USA Wrestling board. So he's working on growing wrestling in the state of Minnesota, and he does a lot of streaming for our club. So we're all just very involved in wrestling, and we love it. Um, I have a business called Wrestling Minded, and so obviously it's very passion, very close to our heart, as far as kind of wrestling and growing wrestling and making an impact in the community. So, yeah, that's kind of who I am in a nutshell, but we definitely can pull back some layers.
Yeah.
We'd love to.
Yeah. Okay. So we usually ask this to all our guests, and we responded to this question on our first episode. So, what is your first, or what was your first exposure to wrestling? So, like, it could be as a child, or like whatever is true for you. For you.
Yeah. Yeah, great question. For me, it starts at the very beginning. My dad was a wrestler, and his hometown was very known for wrestling and was very successful, and they were at state tournaments every year. And so I grew up around wrestling. He Every time his hometown would make it to the state tournament, he'd be hauling us girls. I It was just me and my younger sister, and so no boys in our in our family, so it's just us girls with my dad, and he still loved wrestling, and so he'd haul us to the Minnesota State High School tournament every year, and we'd be watching all of his buddies' kids and all the, everyone competing. And so I grew up around wrestling at an early age, watching it, hearing about it, knowing that my dad was very involved in it when he was younger. So it was just kind of, not something that we participated in. I was the three sport athlete in softball, basketball, and volleyball. And volleyball became my main sport. So we were a very athletic family, but wrestling was just kind of something that we watched from the outside because, we didn't do it ourselves. But I went on to college at the University of Minnesota at the D1 level, and I played volleyball there for the Gophers. And so even then, the Gopher team, the wrestling team back in the early 2000s, were very good. So every opportunity I could get when I wasn't in the volleyball, gym or off traveling somewhere, I'd go try to watch matches and even see wrestling from that level. And then, when I married my husband, he wasn't really involved in wrestling that much yet, but when we had kids, I kind of knew that I'm like, okay, I want to, like, if the opportunity presents itself, I want, to expose my boys to wrestling. And so it all started kind of in my family. We had a neighbor boy that wrestled, and the dad was a coach actually in our community here. And he took a look at my kid, and he's like, I think he could really be a wrestler. And I'm like, I know, right? Like I was kind of excited about that. So we took my older son Carter when he was in kindergarten just to go watch a practice. He wasn't quite sure yet if he wanted to kind of do it. He was kind of a little, iffy, washy. And so we took him and my younger son, who was like one at the time. Carter was like 5. My younger son, Will, was 1. And we went to go watch a practice. And I still have this picture of, I remember I took it from, they were laying on the mats and I took it from behind and they were just watching. And you could see all the other boys in the background. And that year, he decided he wasn't ready yet. So we didn't actually start until the next year when he was in 1st grade. And then he was like, okay, I think I'm ready to try this. And like, little did we know how the floodgates would open up and how much wrestling would become a part of our lives after that. So we've been involved in wrestling now. I think I'd said, I think it's been about 11 years. Now he's a junior and 17, and my younger son is 13. So yeah, that's kinda where it all started.
I feel like then you're the most like wrestling immersed since your dad did it. Like
Yeah.
Nelson,
Yep.
her husband,
Yeah.
his dad. Did he wrestle, Bob?
He did wrestle, yeah.
Yeah. So that's awesome. And
Yeah.
obviously you liked wrestling like from your dad. So that's really cool that you decided to then, expose your kids to it. And then did your husband wrestle or did he not wrestle before you guys were married?
Yeah, this is also a very fun story. So my husband wrestled 1 year in 7th grade, okay? So 1 year in 7th grade, and he got, like, suplexed and hurt. He got injured, and his family, his parents after that were like, "Nope, no more. You're done." Like, he did not wrestle after that, and if you were to ask anyone who actually knows him now that he only wrestled 1 year, like, he has become such a, like, in just immersed in the sports that he's just nerded out on it that, like, no one would ever know, like, he knows more about wrestling than wrestlers who wrestled. Like, he's become such a student of the game that he's just amazing at what he's been able to, like, acquire, and it all started literally when my kiddo started in 1st grade is when the first time that he actually started, like, getting back into it and understanding, and now he's, like, far surpassed any expectations. I mean, it's just crazy, but yeah.
Because it reminds me of my father-in-law. So he wrestled in high school. He wrestled in college, actually.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And then, Nelson has a brother and my husband, they wrestle. That's all they do. That's all they did
Yeah.
all year round. That's all. I think Nelson said he usually had August and September off.
Yeah.
And then they would start wrestling again. Or maybe it's just August.
Mhm.
But so they didn't start doing freestyle and Greco until my husband was it 7th grade or 8th grade? So he got in on it on the later end, right? And so they didn't really know much about it. And then my father-in-law became like the book for Greco and freestyle.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how it, he'd never wrestled it.
Yeah.
But my husband's brother, he was going for the Olympics.
Yeah, he was in the
and
world
he
team
went on the
trials.
world team trials. He almost made it to the Olympics.
Sure.
And Bob was his coach
Yeah.
because he knew everything, right? Like my
Yeah.
father-in-law,
But he had
never wrestled it
that.
before. Yeah. So I think it's just one of those things, like any sport, right? Like you focus and you could be so knowledgeable about it.
Yeah.
So
Yep, exactly. Especially when you're passionate about it.
yes,
I mean,
100%,
you can learn
100%.
anything.
That
Yep.
was my next point. I was like, when you love it and like when you enjoy it and enjoy learning about it and enjoy watching it, like how do you not become like an expert and like so good at it? I mean, I'm not likening us to like great sports
I'm not
people,
an expert. I'm not an expert.
but I feel like sometimes that I'm like, I've never wrestled, right?
No.
But like every year I'm like, I know more and more and more. And, my oldest is 8. So like by the time they're in high school, like I feel like I should be pretty knowledgeable on the sport, not a coach necessarily, but with time, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yep, it'll come. It'll come.
Yeah.
After being in the sport for 11 years, I've kind of become the mom that everyone's like, "Okay, Kelly, what's happening?
Oh, I love
What
that.
went on there? What did they do? What was that move? What happened?" I'm like, and then, you just kind of know and
Yeah.
understand, and you become kind of the resident, like, "All right, Kelly, what's going on?"
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Yep.
cool.
Well, we also wanted to talk about your book.
Oh,
so
yes.
we purchased it. We read it.
Yeah.
So we
Oh,
want
that's
everyone to
awesome.
see
I
it.
love that.
Yeah.
But we kind of want to know what was your inspiration behind it? Like tell us why you wrote the book and all that.
Yeah, it's kind of multifaceted. So
Okay.
first one, I think one of my big inspirations is my dad, right? So and
Mhm.
my
Sure.
dad unexpectedly passed away back in
Oh,
2016.
I'm so
So
Oh,
sorry.
it's
sorry to
kind
hear
of a
that.
little bit of a legacy for me to kind of keep like impacting the sport in a way that is very meaningful for
Yeah.
myself and for my family. So a little bit of a legacy thing there that I trying to kind of keep alive. And then second of all, there isn't a lot, there is hardly any like materials and books about wrestling for
Yeah.
like
Yep.
younger children. Like a lot of them are, past coaches or, actual like wrestlers that have written like memoirs or like tips on coaching or tips on wrestling and strategy, but like, there's some kind of even maybe some chapter books, but there aren't a lot of like resources for like young
Mhm.
children
Yeah.
around wrestling. Like there's so much about soccer and baseball and football and
Yeah.
basketball. And wrestling is just so underrepresented. And I feel
Yes.
like as the sport continues to grow, and we know it is, like you can
Mhm.
see it in every state, like just growing and becoming and once people are in it, like, as you 2 probably experience, like, you just fall in love with it, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
And then, just being able to kind of, you know, have kids at a younger age understand more about it, like being able to read stories and talk through scenarios and kind of some of that messaging. I
Yeah.
think it's so important to be able to reach them at a younger age when they're so impressionable in learning the sport than when they are later on and then
Yeah.
trying to like, oh,
Yeah.
like light bulbs go on later. Like there's opportunities for it to go on a lot earlier if we can kind of sit down and talk with them and read with them
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
do things like that. And then I think the third reason that I kind of am all about, just being in sports and athletics so long, like as an athlete myself, playing at college level, and I went on to even coach volleyball at a college level and the high school level, and now just being around wrestling for 11 years and kind of seeing where sports and athletics is going. I Some of the things that you kind of see and kind of hear about, it's a little like, oh,
Oh,
come
yeah.
on, like I think we need
Yeah.
to rethink this a little bit,
Yeah.
right? And so I kind of wanted to help just kind of empower and start inspiring a little bit of that rethinking process, or at least just maybe a little bit of a pause and reflection opportunity
Yeah.
to
Sure.
kind of start thinking about, the most effective approach to athletics, right? Like, I am all about kind of really loving the process before
Uh-huh.
we're loving the podium.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's all about kind of really focusing on it's just a different approach on like how you're getting to that next
Yeah.
level, right?
Yeah.
You really love the process before you're so focused on the wins and the losses. Like it just, you find so much more joy and fulfillment. Like wins come if you focus on the process and every day making progress and improving, those wins that end up coming, but you're having so much joy and fulfillment and just becoming better and really being intentional about training and what you're training in and how you're doing
Yeah.
that, that you find your joy in that. And that was kind of one of my biggest things that I wanted to kind of start the conversation about in writing this book and writing it in a way that is for younger audiences
Mhm.
that does feel like really relatable and easier to understand than, like me just talking about it
Mhm.
here. I couldn't say these same words to a 4-year-old or a
Yeah.
5-year-old child, right? So it's just kind of a different approach. I felt like doing that through story and approaching it from a younger age and even reaching parents from that younger age.
Yep.
I just felt would be a really impactful and kind of out of the box way to maybe start the conversation.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I
Uh,
love that.
yeah.
I love that. I love the message when I was reading it. I love the message of him saying like, I need to love wrestling before I get the win, right? Rocky,
Yeah.
right? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Like
Yes.
it's Rocky, right? I'm like, sorry.
Yep,
Um,
yep.
and so I love that too because one of the things my husband always asks the kids when he's maybe not as much in high school because it's a little more intense, but when he's coaching
Yeah.
Yesenia's kids or our other like families in the club, the one of the only things he asks is like, "Did you have fun today?
Yeah.
Did you
Yeah.
enjoy it today? Were you smiling out there? I saw a smile." You know what I mean? So I love
Yep.
that because I think that is just always a good way to make the day positive because it is really about you need to love the sport and like you said, the wins will come.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is kind of a little bit of a controversial topic because a lot
Mhm.
of times when you hear some of those big coaches, like I just read a blog the other day where someone was trying to say, "Hey, winning's still important. We still need to focus on it." And I guess what I'm not saying, like, it's not that it's not important.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
it's more like that can winning is still always the goal, right?
Right.
Mhm.
But you don't need to be fully like you can find your joy now in making progress and improvement rather than foregoing it
Yeah.
until
Yeah.
you get the win. Like wins are fleeting, right? They're like
Yeah.
a flash in the pan.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
afterwards you're like, okay, wait, now what do I do? Like
Mhm.
now what am I working for? So
Yeah.
if we can just help kids kind of start rethinking that and kind of framing that a little bit different, I feel like we could make such an impact on just generations of kids to come, right? And even for
Yeah.
Yes.
parents now, parenting,
Yeah.
making this a little bit kind of rethinking our approach a little bit. And it's not like I said that winning's not important. It's just how, like what you're focusing on and
Yeah.
Yeah.
what you're finding fulfillment and joy
Sure.
in doing.
Yes.
Because I sit on the bleachers so many times and I love like listening to people
Oh,
and
yeah.
like like I'm such a
Me
people
too.
observer, like even
Yep.
in gyms, like I'm an introvert myself. When I get talking about things I'm passionate about, like I could talk to you forever about wrestling, but
Yeah.
I'm very much an introvert and I love to just like observe people and listen to what they're saying and what they're hearing. And I couldn't tell you how many times that I've heard from like a mom or dad that I'm sitting by that, "Oh, I just wish my kid would get a win today." Then they would feel more confident or they'd feel more, they'd feel happy. They wouldn't be so crabby all the time. And I just want to be like, "Oh, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
they don't need the win to like
No.
feel confident. We got to find
Yeah.
other things, little wins along
Yeah.
the way, like
Yeah.
make the process enjoyable."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when they win, it's like the cherry on top rather
Yeah.
than the whole cake that they're
Yeah.
trying to,
Yeah.
get. And if they don't get it, they're not
Yeah.
happy,
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
just a different way of approaching competitive,
Yeah.
athletics or sports. It's
Yeah.
just a different way of rethinking it that I think could be more effective in the long run and more enjoyable than some of the approaches that I kind of hear and see
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
lot of people taking today. So,
Yeah. Well, I truly appreciate the message of the book. I have 4 boys. I don't know if you're like aware of that, but and they're young, so it's 2, 4, 6, and 8. And we're looking for like the future always for our kids. So we ideally they would wrestle through high school, in college, and
mhm.
in order for that to be sustainable, like what we want them to do is to love the sport. So like they'll have seasons where they're at the top of their age group and they'll be like dominating, and then maybe the next year they won't. But does that mean that you should quit because you're not getting those wins? Like we just want them to be wrestlers for a sustainable amount of time. And I
Yep.
feel like focusing on other aspects other than wins and losses is the way to do it. And that's what we try to do. And my husband as a club coach, I feel like kids wrestling is like sometimes whoever lands on top wins, like as you keep going the skill level gets up there, but like we don't need for a 6-year-old to be sad, or to be like only chasing the win. Like it's like, okay, let's identify as a wrestler, let's have fun at practice, let's learn the skill of being able to take coaching and like different things other than like
Mhm.
I got first place or whatever. So I really appreciate that message from the book. So I need to love wrestling. I need to identify as a wrestler, and I need to, fall down, get back up, try again, get back out there. Like that's the goal for my
Yep.
kids, for our family, for wrestling. So I really like the book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge. I completely agree with you there. Like, it's not only building technical skills, right? It's character building as well. And that's a
Sure.
Yes.
huge, huge piece of it that if they can build that early, that you have that the rest of your life, right?
Yeah.
You build that foundation now and learn the now, then it'll just set them up for being able to handle both challenges and
Yes.
adversity and successes in the
Yep.
future, right? Like
Yep.
it's just we're really just make creating the foundation and making sure
Yep.
that it's strong. And I believe that sport is one of the most profound ways to learn some of those like lessons, right? That
Yeah.
you're kind of in this little microcosm of like life and you're dealing with adversity. I mean, it's just amazing what
Yeah.
you can kind of take from that and apply later in life. And
Yeah.
I think it's just such a great opportunity for kids to be involved in. As long as we're kind of laying the framework as parents and as coaches in kind of an effective way, I guess
Yes.
I
Yes.
would say.
Yeah.
And that's where it kind of starts and where I wanted kind of the goal of the book was to kind of start modeling a little bit of that structure and framework to kind of start rethinking that kind of messaging and that process a little bit
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. So, do you have the book? Let me
Oh,
see.
yeah.
Yeah. So, we will in our show notes and all that stuff put the link where you can get this. So I really want to win, and it's by Kelly. And yeah, so we can get that out there for a lot of people to know. I know we have like 80 club kids in our
Yeah.
club, so like we got lots of
That's
youngsters
awesome.
that will like benefit from this book, and just like you said, for parents, for all the wrestling people.
I really like
Yeah.
too the terms at the back of the
Oh
book
yes.
because
Yes.
like we were talking and I think maybe we've said in our episodes that's sometimes a big gap
Yeah, that's a big
of
barrier.
like parents like not understanding what's going on. Their kid just started wrestling. Like even into high school, they
Yeah.
like don't know what's going on. And
Yes.
this is so helpful. I'm
Yeah.
like, you could have a book, guys. Like you
Yeah.
can read it in
That's
here.
awesome.
And
Well,
I love the
yeah,
fun
thanks for that
activities.
feedback.
Yes, yes. And I love the fun activities in here too that you put. Like that's fun. I'm thinking of like my
Yeah,
nephew.
thanks.
He doesn't wrestle, but like he loves like things like that throughout the book. Like, do you want to like he
Mhm.
loves those like activities to like think and like pay attention like throughout the book. So
Yes.
that was a really good
Well,
idea.
and that was the goal too, is that, hopefully, even if families have kids that are wrestling, they might be even toying along even younger ones that aren't wrestling yet, but they're sitting in the gym all day, and you're trying to keep them busy as moms. And so my whole goal for the book was it's very multifaceted, as you can tell, but like even those activities and things in it, even for the younger kiddos that are just sitting there, they're a way to be involved and talk about wrestling, but still keep it fun and interactive and keep them occupied and doing more things like that that are still wrestling themed, but it's helping moms and it's helping little ones learn and all those things. And not only the book, I don't know if you had seen, but I also have I have a coloring and activity book that goes with it too. So it's kind of like a companion piece. So like there's like dot to dot, like it's all the characters of the book and there's coloring and activities. So that was just kind of another way to provide, once again, you're in gyms all day. Like, why not just keep the wrestling theme going and have conversations and keep kids occupied and things like that. So that's my whole like approach is just to kind of rethink all of this and like what tools can we make for this sport to just really continue to just elevate it, right? Thinking outside the box and, what's missing and what can I do or what can others do to help continue to kind of fill those voids where there's either, lack of knowledge or there's a lack of there's just more tools needed. Like there just don't exist. So what can we bring to the table that can still help people. I think it's a big thing, and that's what I'm trying to bring, to the table and for others to do, and just do it in a different way because I feel like, I really appreciate what you 2 do. I mean, you're bringing the wrestling wife perspective and then, the kind of the mom perspective on the other side, and for so long, I feel like the sport has been and it's not a bad thing, it's just the way it was, but kinda dominated by, wrestlers who wrestled, who go on to coach, who then, it kinda keeps cycling, which is good, it's great, that's kinda what it has been, but, I feel like if we can bring new perspectives to the sport, like I think we really could just really make it amazing, right? Like, um, from the wife perspective and the mom perspective, and we have so many different, information and things to bring to it that, yeah, we could just keep on growing this. So,
Yeah, I think that's why Mara and I also when our her husband was like, "You got to start a podcast." I'm like, "There's so much room for that." Like that is not anything that I have heard of in like anything. And we did like a quick Google search and like all we found was like a WWE like
yeah,
podcast and like resource.
exactly.
Um but I'm like why not? Like
Yeah.
we're there, like you said, we're in the gym, we're in the bleachers, we're like there and we have input. Maybe it's not the input you're used to hearing,
Yep.
right? But like I think it's valid input, you
Yeah.
know? So I truly agree with you on that. And as the sport continues to grow, which like you said, it is growing, like I feel like there is so much information that needs to be like portrayed out there to like new parents or like people who are just curious or people who just want to watch on TV, like
Yep.
that like we're trying to do what we can because we love the sport and our
Yeah.
husbands love the sport and my kids love the sport and hopefully your child will
Yeah.
love the sport. So like and there's like people out there who like I guess with the space there's like always negative comments and reviews, not that we get any or like that we have or whatever, but I feel like it doesn't matter because we're the brave ones who are putting something out there. So like you're brave and you put out a book about something that you love and like
Yeah.
we're, trying to give information and we mess up and we do whatever, but like it's for the sport and there's growing pains for the sport and all that. But anyway, so yeah, sport is growing and we love it and we want to input.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. And it's fun to
Yeah.
be a part of it too, right?
Yeah.
And to rethink the way that things have always been done. So I love that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So being in Minnesota,
Oh.
freestyle and Greco is pretty big, right?
Yeah.
So do you
Mhm.
have
Yep.
a hand in any of that? Do your sons do that?
Yes,
Partake in
yes.
freestyle and Greco?
We
Okay.
both well, my older son has been doing it for quite a few years now, both freestyle and Greco.
Okay.
And then my younger son just started. I think he's been doing it for a couple years now. And my husband Jeff has kind of been the one that's you really starting we have our own school freestyle and Greco program now, so he's
Oh, that's
kind of been the one
awesome.
that's starting to
Love
get
that.
that going in our own local club, because it just hadn't been that big, but it's kind of one of those things that, it's growing, and
Yeah.
my older son's been to Fargo, for the freestyle Greco in the summer for the
Oh,
last 2
yeah.
years competing, and yeah, it's just something that is growing and it's becoming more common to have now. Like it used to be just kind of elite programs, which my son
Yeah.
does go to kind of elite program to train as well. But then now we're kind of starting it younger in our own
Yes.
local club programs. I actually just put together a flyer today for our freestyle and Greco program for this year.
Awesome.
I help my husband with a lot of the marketing and communications for our club. I love that. Yes, Cydia, we should talk sometime.
Yes.
I love doing that. I own another business that's focused on marketing. So anyway, I'm very much
Yeah.
an entrepreneur at heart. But yeah, we're just putting together our freestyle and Greco in our program here. And last year we started it at fourth grade, and this year we're starting at with first graders. So it'll be open
Okay.
to
Yeah.
all our youth starting in first grade through sixth grade. We'll have like a youth program, and then we have like a seventh through 12th grade high school program as well that will
Yeah.
be doing freestyle and Greco because our numbers are growing. I mean,
Yeah.
it's amazing. It's so great.
Yeah. My kids are well, I said the ages already, but my 6 and my 8-year-old did it last year and my 8-year-old did it or did we do is it 2
They
years?
both did.
Yeah. Well, they're young, but they love it.
Yeah.
Like they are 5 and people like they love it. It's like if you ask them, they like it better than Folkstyle, but like they just love freestyle and Greco specifically. So do you have like a favorite
You
freestyle
know,
and Greco?
I really do enjoy Greco as well. It was my son's favorite for a couple years. Now it's kind of both. He likes freestyle and Greco. I think because he's gotten a little
Yeah.
better at freestyle. Greco came,
There
I
you go.
think, a
Yep.
little easier in the beginning. But, yeah, Greco is really fun to watch, especially when it's just all upper body and, they're
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
it's a different approach to wrestling, right? You see
Mhm.
them in their starting
Yeah.
positions and you're like, "What the
Yeah.
heck is going on?" They're all, like,
Yeah.
upright and their
Yeah.
hands are here and
Yeah. It's like that awkward. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a kind of a different you think that you are a veteran, like, seasoned wrestling mom, and then you watch a Greco and you're like,
Mm.
You're
Yeah.
like you're relearning all over again, right? But,
Yeah, it's so
yeah.
funny because I feel like I know more about a freestyle and Greco match than I do like folk style because I think it's just because my husband loves it so much. So like,
Yep.
yeah, it's so funny. Like I feel like even though I'm very passionate about folk
Yes,
style,
we love
like
Folkstyle.
I was unhinged at the sectional tournament last weekend. I will own it. But like when it comes to freestyle and Greco, I feel way more confident in what I'm yelling. If that makes any sense.
Yep, totally. Yep,
Yeah. So wait,
exactly.
have you been to Fargo? You said your son has qualified. Have you personally been to Fargo?
Yep, been there the last 2 summers. Yep, watched all the kids in their black market trading
Oh
Oh
outside
yeah.
and
yes.
yeah, it's a whole different experience, but yes, we've been to Fargo the last 2 summers. My older son has competed in both years, so yeah.
That's that's awesome. We had a goal as a podcast to make it out to Fargo this year, but baby Baker will be born during.
Oh,
Like yeah, yeah, so we were like we're gonna try to go to Fargo, get some good coverage,
Yeah.
and then when I got pregnant I was like, Yesenia, I'm
oh,
so sorry,
darn
I'm
it.
due like the week before Fargo. And so she took it great, but when my husband had to tell